Hi beautiful souls, it's Tan here today talking to you about the 7th house. So, let's see what sign is ruling your 7th house as usual and what planets are in your 7th house, and please leave them in the comments below so that I can learn a little bit from you and you can learn a little bit from me and we can all learn a little bit from each other through our own personal experiences, because that is the best way to learn. Alright guys, so houses 1 to 6, okay? These are the houses of our self. They're in the lower quadrant of your natal chart, okay? They're all about, being aware of ourself, being aware of our possessions, our values, our mind, how it works, our family, our inner self, being able to express ourselves, and then being able to refine the expressions that we have for ourselves. So, houses 1 to 6, we're kind of like, we've mastered ourselves. Now what? Now we get to the 7th house. Now we start to kind of go out there in the world and we want to experience other people. So I call this house the house of our partners, or the awareness of other people, because when you first step out of your little self-absorption zones down there, right? We want to form relationships with others, but we start with one-to-one relationships, and that is what this house is all about. So, of course, this house is also known as the marriage house, but marriage can run a gamut of different interpretations. Ideally, ultimately, this house is telling us of the kinds of contracts, okay, that we make one-to-one with another person, whether that be business partnerships, whether that be a marriage partnership, because we have to sign contracts for marriage. So it's about that commitment that we are making with another person, all right? Okay, so there is a theory that the 7th house is the house of our shadow side, or it's a house of projection. Now, if we look at the 1st house, okay, the 1st house is our self-awareness, right? Planets in there, or the signs that rule the 1st house, tells us things that we know about ourselves, we accept about ourselves, and it's very obvious to us, this is who we are. And the reason why that is because of the way that we grew up and how our parents accepted certain qualities, certain archetypes that we take on and we put in our 1st house, and we're like, yep, my parents accept this, my society accepts this about me, I'm gonna dump it in my 1st house, okay? Now there are certain qualities that the culture, the society, your parents, your family did not accept. What do we do with this? We dump them in our 7th house, okay? But this does not mean that it is not a part of us. The fact that we're able to take that and dump it in the 7th house means that it is a part of us, but it was an unaccepted part of us. So therefore, this 7th house is actually our subconscious mind, okay? It's the part of us that is in the back of our minds, it's the unconscious, and we just dump it in there. We leave it there. So what happens is when we start to meet someone, whether that be a romantic marriage partner, a spouse, or whether that be a business partnership person that we get with, when we see some traits, okay, in that person that is the same trait as our 7th house, as the stuff that we dumped into our unconscious, we recognize it within them. All right, because we know it inside ourselves. We have it within ourselves. That's why we can see it within them. But because we were told that this was not a good trait, we feel an extreme repulsion, okay, to those qualities. But at the same time, we feel an extreme attraction to those qualities and traits because unconsciously it's, sparking something deep within us. That's why we become attracted to it. We know that if we engage with such people, we are going to be able to become whole. But this wholeness is a result of bringing up stuff from our unconscious, that our shadow side that we've repressed. It's not that we're taking other things from outside and making ourselves whole. It's that these people are able to are able to teach us and allow us to bring up our shadow side, okay? So this is what we would call projection. It's that we see something in other people that is actually in our unconscious, but we're not saying, oh, that's me. We're saying that's them, but actually that's me. It's just in my unconscious. What can happen is that these people, okay, who embody the traits of our 7th house are actually very good for us, okay, because we have so much that we can learn from them, all right? But because if we have not done shadow work by ourselves first, we are likely to kind of stay away from these people, or the relationship is likely to not last because they are likely to be too much for us. They're likely to, it almost seems like they go against our values and the things that we believe is right within society. But that's kind of a bit of an illusion, okay? Because we actually have those traits in ourselves. So that's why shadow work is really necessary, okay? And shadow work is done by recognizing how we feel about people that we meet. It's recognizing that extreme reaction, okay, that we have towards certain characteristics with people. And then understanding that that is actually a part of us and embracing that. And then we can be with somebody and then have an amazing relationship with them after we've done our shadow work. Once we have shone light on the shadow, okay, we can always see the shadow creeping up behind us. We're not taken aback by it when other people, okay, come and they have the qualities of our shadow. So we then feel, oh, like what's up, If we just see the shadow with us all the time, you know, it doesn't control us anymore. We know that's there. I hope it's making sense, guys. Now, the 7th house is considered to also be the house of our open enemies, because the people that we used to love the most can become the people that we hate the most and that hate us the most. You know what I'm talking about, guys? You know what I'm talking about, right? The sign on the 7th house and planets there and the signs that those planets are in is going to also indicate the kinds of relationships that we desire with other people, okay, and the kinds of people that we desire in relationships. It's also a very public house. So the 1st to the 6th house was kind of a private area of our lives. We get to the 7th house, we're starting to see our public role within life. So if you're somebody who's got a very strong 7th house, you know, planets in there and things like that, then you'd be really good working with people one-to-one, you know, whatever that may be, whether that's like counseling or, you know, whatever. Because it's a house of one-to-one relationships. And if you kind of have lots of planets there and if it's a heavy emphasis on your 7th house, then people are gonna be kind of gravitate more towards you, you know, whatever those planets may be. They're gonna have a very strong reaction to you, as opposed to someone who doesn't have any planets in there. People are gonna they wanna come to you maybe for advice, or just they wanna have a relationship with you, you know, more likely, okay? The axis of the 1st house and the 7th house is one, so there's 2 axes, right? We're gonna get to the 4th house and the 10th house, but the 1st house and the 7th house axis is one of cooperation, 7th house, versus independence, 1st house. All right, so if you have like this planets in the 1st and planets in the 7th and they're opposing each other, the key to your life would be to find a balance between independence and cooperation. But if you have just planets there in the 7th and it doesn't really oppose the 1st, you got to be kind of careful, because there is a tendency for codependency and a tendency for relying too much on other people or seeking out other people, you know, too much, and not really being able to have that place where you can, you know, say, hey, this is me, this is myself, this is my independence. But it's always kind of like you kind of try to get that with other people. Do you know what I mean? Okay, so to quickly summarize, the 7th house is the awareness of other people. And because we become aware of other people, we start to notice within them traits, certain characteristics and traits that are really attractive to us, but that also really repels and we find just annoying and disgusted and irritated by. Therefore, we begin to think about projection and about the shadow work that we have to do if we are willing to get along with other people. If we can't own up to our shadow, we're going to have problems being committed to people. But so if we've managed to work with our shadow, we can find a place where we can cooperate and we can work together in a team with another person. So therefore, this house is going to be the house of our partnerships, our marriage, or our open enemies. Okay, so for my 7th house experience, as you all know, I like to share this stuff with you guys so we can learn from each other. So my 7th house is ruled by the sign of Sagittarius, and I've got Uranus, Saturn, Neptune, and Vesta, asteroid Vesta, in there in the sign of Capricorn. I have come to realize that maybe the less planets you have in your 7th house, the better it actually is, unless you've got Venus there, which could be nice. But the more planets you actually have in your 7th house, because planets represent actions we take, the more actions you're going to take with other people, and that can sometimes be a little bit too much because it causes a bit of a desire to always be with people and creates a bit of loneliness and fear of being alone. But anyways, let's talk first about the fact that my 7th house is ruled by Sagittarius. So because Sagittarius, you know, is the house of anything that is different from us, other cultures, traveling, you know, higher education, beliefs and philosophies, I have found that, you know, a lot of the relationships that I've had, whether that be friendships, partnerships, romantic relationships, are usually with people who come from a very different cultural background, different religion. They speak different first language. Of course, you know, we would speak English, but they would have a different first language, different, you know, their whole background, the way they grew up, their culture, is so different. And that's actually very attractive. And relationships, whether it be friends or romantic, works better for me when it's like long distance for some reason. Like if you're not here, where in the country that I'm in or in the city that I'm in, then the communication is better and the relationship is better. Probably because that Uranus is right conjunct the descendant, and it's causing this kind of like, I need my space, you go do your thing, we meet up once in a while, and things like that. But it's also really hard to be like fully committed, because when you don't have somebody there with you on a daily basis, it's kind of like, well, how do I know you? Like, do I really know you at all? And as Jupiter rules Sagittarius, I'm going to see where Jupiter is placed in my chart, and I have Jupiter in Gemini in my 12th house conjunct Mercury. So what I've actually noticed with this is pretty interesting, is that I kind of grew up, so my first language is Thai, because Gemini is the sign of learning languages, right? And the 12th house is all things foreign, right? I found that though Thai is my first language, I prefer to communicate using English. The communication with me and another person is better when it's actually in English, which is actually my second language, which is like that 12th house, you know, foreign stuff, kind of a vibe, and, you know, Gemini being the language. So let's talk a little bit about Neptune and Uranus being in the 7th house. So I did not realize this before in my life, all right? Like, this is something that I've recently just realized after studying astrology, obviously, is, you know, the reason why relationships don't, like committed relationships don't work out for me is, you know, Uranus and Neptune is a very impersonal planet. It's a generational planet. And it has a lot to do with karma, okay? And, you know, what I've come to realize is that there's a lot of karma that I have to work before I can really find commitment, partnerships workable. Like, Uranus is like the higher octave of Mercury, it's the higher mind. And Neptune is the higher octave of Venus, it's the higher love. And I feel that if I don't understand these two things, if I can't embrace these two things into my life, partnerships will never work for me, all right? And it's not because of anything, it's just because of kind of just who I'm supposed to be in this life, you know? What what both Neptune and Uranus wants us to do is to humble our ego and to become more spiritually evolved. That's the karma of these two planets. That's what I'm talking about here, is that to find success in relationships, I have to be able to be more spiritually evolved first and humble my ego a little bit. And in doing so, I've come to realize that, you know, the way that relationships are within our society is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But I'm supposed to understand relationships on a more cosmic level. And I've come to realize that, you know, the purpose of relating to other people is not that so that they can be our soulmate and that they can be with us for the rest of our lives, and that, you know, we can, and that they never, and that, you know, like, and that we are supposed to be able to trust them with everything and we're supposed to always just be together. Like, I've come to realize that that is not the cosmic purpose of relationships. People come into our lives to teach us a lesson. And once that lesson is done, they go and they leave. And that's okay. Because that's the truth, you know. There's the societal truth, there's the, you know, the man-made truths of relationships, which is that we're supposed to be with somebody, we're supposed to get married, we're supposed to have children, and then grow old together. But then there's the universal truth, which is that my energy and your energy, when we mix them together, what can we take from this? What can we do to evolve from this, you know? And to think that somebody must come into our lives and just be with us forever, like they are ours, it's coming from kind of an egocentric place, just from what I'm learning. You know, we gotta let people go, you know, they're not here to be with us. We are here together to grow together, you know, it's more of like that. And what I've also learned from, you know, having Neptune here, for example, there's so much to learn from Neptune here, but I think I'm going to talk a little bit about, you know, the whole being ideal thing when I talk about Venus in the 12th house, because I have that. But, you know, when these people come into our lives, we learn more about ourselves, okay? And unless we can really learn to love ourselves, we can't love another person. We just can't, because we don't know how to love. It starts with loving ourselves first, and I've had to learn this the hard way, but it's okay. Life is a learning process, it's fine. So the last planet here is Saturn. And I'm kind of going through my Saturn return right now, or like right when I'm making this video. So I haven't really gotten through the Saturn return. So if you're not familiar with Saturn return, it's when Saturn comes back to the place that it was born, the place that it was the moment that you were born. So it usually happens when you're around 28 to 30 years old, right? So I haven't really gotten past my Saturn return yet, but I'm fighting with it. Saturn in the 7th house does bring loneliness because it's the house of relationships. And I recently had to cut out a relationship in my life that was no longer right for me. That's what Saturn does. When you have a Saturn return, you cut stuff out of your life, stuff that is no longer working for you, stuff that you do because you should instead of because it's for the purpose of your sun. If the things that you've been doing is not meeting with the purpose of your sun, Saturn will cut all those things out. I've cut my job last year, recently cut a relationship. And Saturn makes you feel like you're supposed to hit the reset button on your life, basically. So, and some days it's like, God, this is gonna sound depressing, but it's hard to get up in the morning. You know, I'm talking about those days when you're kind of like, oh, you just can't get up in the morning and just don't have the energy to do anything. And then with Saturn in the 7th house, it's like there's nobody there for me anymore. But you know what? It's okay. Saturn wants me to learn that you can't always have someone there for you, Tan. You can't. Sometimes you gotta suck it up. You just gotta be by yourself and suck it up and work through it by yourself and just find out how strong you are and be disciplined in this process. So it's okay, it's fine. The thing is, so many planets here in the 7th house, I've never actually been alone, you know? I've always had this energy or this desire or taking action to be with people, you know. Usually it's like usually it's like a committed relationship. You know, I'm always seeking that out. And if you have a lot of planets in 7, you can probably relate. But Saturn tells me that nobody can complete you until you complete yourself. Well, nobody can complete you. You have to complete yourself. So anyways, guys, I'll probably make a video talking about Saturn return once I get through my Saturn return, because I don't know what to say about it right now. So that's my interpretation of the 7th house. Don't forget to leave a comment below. Let us know what sign rules your 7th house, what planets you have there. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button if you haven't yet. If you've already subscribed, then thank you very much for coming along with me on these astrology growth journeys, growing together. And I'll see you very soon in the next video. Bye bye.